All right, final day. I'll try to be a little bit more brief here because the Obama one got away from me a little bit. So, we're going to try to deal with the rise of Donald Trump and what his presidency means for the United States going forward. So, the election of 2016 was unconventional in a whole bunch of different ways. One, it was an incredibly crowded field. There was no clear anointed successor on the Republican side. On the Democratic side, former Secretary of State and former First Lady and New York Senator Hillary Clinton was the presumptive nominee and was able to, despite a relatively vigorous primary challenge from Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton was able to secure the Democratic nomination relatively easily. On the Republican side, there were a number of people who seemed like they might be reasonable candidates, but each of them got tripped up along the way, and it led to the rise of a wealthy businessman, real estate developer slash reality TV star named Donald Trump. He was able to win a plurality of a significant of a plurality of the vote in most of the Republican primaries, securing him enough of a delegate lead to get the nomination. And so Donald Trump was an unconventional candidate for a number of reasons. One, he had no political or military experience. And two, he rose to power from the idea that the political establishment is corrupt and we need to go a different direction. So people frustrated with the status quo voted for Donald Trump because he broke pretty much every rule of politics and civil society that we had. And so the election was incredible, or the campaigns were incredibly negative and defined by scandals. Hillary Clinton was tarred by, her long life of public service, and so pretty much anything negative that happened while she was in government was dredged up, and a lot of really, really unfounded claims were passed around about her. But the one that stuck the most was the email scandal, which involved Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server when she was Secretary of State, which people argued was irresponsible because it could potentially have been breached and she could have shared classified or mishandled classified information. After a variety of hearings and an FBI investigation, she was cleared of wrongdoing in that scandal, but it still clearly affected American perception of her. And the idea that Hillary Clinton was in some way corrupt you know, uh, was a defining moment for her. On the other side, for Donald Trump, he had a variety of scandals, none of which really stuck to him for some reason. He had obviously, Donald Trump, because of his long history in business, had had a number of lawsuits. The Trump University scandal seemed like one of the worst ones, where he was basically created a fake university where he pretended like he would allow people to get rich and then tricked them out of money. So that was somewhat problematic. And the other one that would have sunk basically any other politician was the Access Hollywood scandal, where Trump was heard on camera bragging that he was able to sexually assault women because he was wealthy. But none of that really mattered because in the battleground states, so specifically Pennsylvania and Michigan and Ohio, Trump was able to turn those states and was able to win a narrow electoral victory despite losing the popular vote. And so now we get Donald Trump as president. His inauguration was met by massive protests and the birth of the Me Too movement, specifically because of his victory in light of the sexual harassment claims made against him and him being caught on tape bragging about being able to commit sexual assault. So the Women's March and massive protests followed his inauguration. And the Me Too movement was a movement in which women uh, built solidarity to become more, to help them be more confident speaking up about sexual harassment and sexual assault. And the Me Too movement is still a important part of the public discourse, and the effects of it are still being felt. So we will see what effect the Me Too movement has on gender dynamics in the future. Debate over healthcare was one of the most fierce debates in the election of 2016, because of course Trump was running on a platform of quote repealing and replacing Obamacare. So Trump had ran on this platform. He had said multiple times that he has a plan formulated down to the very last steps, and it would be revealed shortly. He said that his plan would be, quote, much better and much cheaper and would provide better coverage for everyone and would have everything that you want in it. And then the Republicans revealed part of their plan, and it failed to pass Congress, which both houses of which were held by Republicans. And so Trump Care did not become a thing. Obamacare was not repealed. But what the Trump administration was able to do was remove the individual mandate, which was the requirement that you have health coverage or you pay a penalty, by taking the amount that, by not getting rid of it, but by taking the fines down to zero. So technically, there is still an individual mandate, but you no longer have to pay a penalty, which is one of the factors that led, one of the things that supposedly led the healthcare law to pay for itself. And so by removing the individual mandate, the Trump administration hoped that Obamacare would collapse. And as of yet, it has not. And so Obamacare is still the law of the land, despite the attempts of the Trump administration to get rid of it. And Trump's repeated claims that he has a healthcare plan that he's going to be unveiling any moment. So it is possible that by tomorrow, Trump will have laid out his clearly detailed healthcare plan, but he hasn't done it yet, so who knows? Immigration reform was also something that Trump ran on. He argued that he was going to, again, end birthright citizenship, significantly increase the customs and border protection and border patrol, and deport all 11 million illegal immigrants. So far, he has, and of course, the famous wall, which was one of his clear campaign proposal, one of his most famous campaign proposals. So far, Trump has accomplished increasing the number of agents at the border, and he has gotten some of his wall funding, although Trump's promises that Mexico would pay for the wall have not materialized, despite his repeated claims that they have. And in the end, uh, and in the end, he did try to end protection for what are called the Dreamers, which were people who were brought to this country illegally as children. The Obama administration had shielded these individuals from deportation, and Trump had ended that practice, arguing that it was executive overreach. But this is still caught up in the courts, and so far, not has not happened. And Trump's wall has been constructed, has parts of Trump's wall have been constructed, but he failed to get the Republican controlled Congress to fund his wall after he failed to get Mexico to fund his wall. And so he has been just moving money around in the US government in order to build portions of the wall. But the beautiful, perfect wall across our southern border that he promised when he was running for president has so far not materialized. One of the things that Trump did succeed at was tax reform. The Trump administration passed significant tax cuts through what's called the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which cut tax rates across the board and also cut corporate taxes, with the hope being that companies would bring their corporate headquarters back to the United States and would pay the lower tax rate, which to some degree has happened. The unfortunate part of this tax reform law is it significantly decreased federal revenue, which, coupled with Trump's increase in federal spending, has led to a ballooning of the federal deficit to levels that we had, quite frankly, never before seen. So even before the COVID-19 crisis, the Trump administration was projected to be running close to $1 trillion deficit. And now, of course, we will be running significantly more than that, adding probably another about 25% to the national debt within the next year. So that's. Of course, one of the most visible parts of the early Trump administration has been the investigation into Russian interference in the US election. This obviously has been in the news repeatedly, so I'm just going to give the briefest overview of what the investigation was about. The investigation was about Russian interference in the election, specifically the hacking of the Democratic National Committee servers to release some of Hillary Clinton's emails, and and then the question of whether or not the Trump campaign colluded with Russia in order to coordinate their attempts to influence the American election of 2016 and to aid Donald Trump. There's really no question that Russia did attempt to intervene in the election and to both sow chaos and to benefit Donald Trump, and that there were clear ties between a number of Trump surrogates and workers and Russia. But the question is, did the campaign formally collude? And then, if so, what should be done about it? So the investigation kicked off shortly after the election. The appointing of special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation was somewhat of a turning point. And in the end, the Mueller report, after approximately a year, came out with a report that said the Trump administration or the Trump campaign did not specifically collude with Russia. And Mueller both said that he is not specifically accusing Donald Trump of a crime, He is also not saying that he did not commit a crime. And so this investigation went on for a long time and ended up being somewhat unsatisfying for basically anybody, everybody, because it didn't decisively say that Trump committed a crime, but it also did not fully let him off the hook. In the end, the investigation led to the impeachment of Donald Trump for a variety of different reasons. Both the Mueller report and the House of Representatives investigations into Trump were stymied by the Trump administration, both by attempting to not or not releasing records, not complying with subpoenas, and by repeatedly undermining the legitimacy of the whole process. And so the House of Representatives ended up sending two articles of impeachment to the Senate, one for obstruction of justice and the other for obstruction of Congress. Trump again refused to comply with that process either and the impeachment inquiry. And so, despite the fact that the House voted to impeach him on two accounts, the Senate then, on a straight party line vote, declined or voted to acquit the president. And so that's what ended the impeachment controversy, again, somewhat unsatisfyingly, because both Trump was impeached, but then also not convicted and not removed from office. And so it seems like none of the stuff yeah, there's really no closure to the whole Trump impeachment thing. And in the end, the election of 2020 will have to settle the fate of Donald Trump. Far as foreign policy goes, Trump has rewritten American foreign policy and basically changed the position of America in the world. On the one hand, Trump is always a huge proponent of the military, uh, you know, making a series of nonsensical comments. He has significantly increased military funding despite the drops in government revenue, which is another component to adding to the deficit and the national debt. So he has, on the one hand, built up the American military to some extent, and on the other hand, he has undermined traditional relationships, attacking NATO, alienating allies in a variety of places, including Japan and South Korea. And so he is building up the United States military, but also destroying the sort of post war and especially post Cold War military and geopolitical landscape that has kept stability in the world pretty much since World War II. The U.S. backing off of all these global issues and getting out of sort of multi-party deals provides opportunities for other rising countries to get more involved. And so, as the United States tries to negotiate individual treaties with countries, uh, different other people or other nations in the world are working much more effectively. So, and of course, we've significantly cut back on the State Department, and Trump distrusts career bureaucrats and diplomats. And so we, at the same time, are also not staffing our embassies effectively, and therefore, in a lot of places, we just don't have much representation or much soft power to try to convince people to do what we want. Trump and media have been in more or less a constant fight since he was elected. Trump famously, of course, speaks in sort of broad generalizations, and when he does provide specifics, they are often incorrect. And so, fact checking of Donald Trump has become a constant pastime for a lot of media organizations. Trump then decries that the media is quote fake news whenever they contradict something that he says. And he points to very fringe media outlets, like One American News Network, which do very little actual reporting and mostly just cheerlead for the president. So what we've ended up seeing is a lot of Americans, especially Trump supporters, trust in the mainstream media has declined, and they no longer have any source of information outside Donald Trump in order to objectively look at his presidency. On the other hand, the media has become incredibly hyperbolic in their condemnations of Trump, and in general, society has become significantly more polarized. Finally, the coronavirus hit. Society was shut down, and I was again forced to start, recording and posting lectures online, which is really not ideal. As of course you know, schools were shut down, businesses were closed, And the United States has become the global epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak. What this means for the long term are, of course, still unknown, but obviously it's an economic calamity. It's a public health calamity, first of all, because as of today, the death toll is in between 80 and 90,000 in the United States, coupled with the fact that somewhere around 30 million people are now filing for unemployment, and the government has passed trillions of dollars in aid packages, which will significantly add to the deficit, and then, of course, the national debt. What is all this going to look like in the long term, and how will this affect the presidential election of 2020? We honestly have no idea. And so we leave you here in a place of uncertainty, shut down, unable with schools closed, listening to my closing lecture online. So you're living through history. Isn't it exciting?